last week, it looks as though, God knows, but it looks as though, and based on all calculations, based on all the empirical evidence, based on all the circumstances that I was in, I should have been mourning the death of my young 16-year-old brother. Some of you might have known this. Some of you prayed for his recovery. A 16-year-old boy who's otherwise healthy, doesn't even eat junk food, he doesn't drink carbonated drinks, he's perfectly healthy. And as I was walking with him, suddenly he collapses to the ground, begins to seize, goes through a very severe seizure. Medics come over, he loses his pulse, his heartbeat stops, he suffers what the doctors labeled as being much worse, and I quote, much worse than a heart attack. The paramedics come over, they begin to shock him, they give him 10 shocks. Normally they give up after the 5th or the 6th shock. They give him 10. They take him back to the hospital. Doctors come to me and say, you know what, we're doing the best we can. Which I thought was another very polite way of saying, don't expect much from your brother's condition because he's not doing too well. And certainly he wasn't doing too well. He was tachycardic, his heart was beating at a rate of 300 beats per minute, the average being 70, 80. And I knew I lost him the moment they came back and said, obviously his heart stopped at one stage, but it started beating again. But I knew I lost him when they came and said that what we want to do now is take him to another specialized hospital, but in the meantime, we want to freeze his body and his brain, so that if there is any hope in his brain starting to function once again, at least we preserve that brain activity. The rest of the body, we don't know. If he wakes up, the likelihood is very high that he's going to be in a vegetative state for a very, very long time. Now, in one word, if you asked me to describe my condition, and he was the only family I had at the time, but if you asked me to describe what I was going through, my mindset at the time, and I'm sharing this with you because I'd like you to remember that saying, that dua, alhamdulillah alladhi afani mimma ibtalahu bihi walau sha'a lafa'al, and to really remember how needful we are, how desperate we are for God's help and intervention at every single moment of our lives. In one word, I would describe my state of mind as absolute helplessness. Absolute helplessness. I guess it would feel the same way if I was drowning in the middle of the ocean and there was no one around to help. The moments of desperation, of destitute helplessness that I went through were very sobering. And they made me realize just how much God's hand is always at play, intervening at every moment. When the natural circumstances are leading this 16-year-old boy to nothing but his inevitable end, to nothing but death, which is what the doctors were talking about, trying to give me hints and glimpses. I don't know what I was going through, but they were all trying to comfort me in anticipation of the moment where somebody, the social worker perhaps, would have to come up to me and say, we've lost him and I'm sorry. And in those moments, I felt, Ya Allah, you're the only one who can help. And I kept saying that to the doctors afterwards. I said, you know what, with all due respect, thank you for everything that you've done. May God bless you. But you're merely instruments and you're tools. Ultimately, his fate, my fate, everybody's fate rests in his hand and no one else. Because when the doctors were going crazy over the fact that he had no heartbeat, his heart was beating at 20 beats per minute. So from 300, it came back down to 20, which is almost clinically dead. And yet, he had high blood pressure. The doctors were going crazy. They couldn't explain how his heart was almost not beating, and yet there was enough blood pressure to sustain the brain to continue to function. The doctors themselves couldn't explain medically what he was going through. And I kept saying, Ya Allah, It's you and you alone. Allahumma, this is a beautiful dua. Try and memorize it. If you can't, look it up online. Or if not, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy. It's recommended to recite this dua at the time of severe affliction, at the time of absolute hopelessness and helplessness, when you know there's only one person who can help, and it's His intervention that really matters, and that's God. Allahumma inni atawajjahu ilayka binabiyyika nabiyyir rahmah. Oh Allah, I turn to you in the name of your messenger, the messenger of mercy. بنبيك نبي الرحمة وأهل بيته الذين اخترتهم على علم على العالمين. اللهم فذلل لي صعوبتها. Oh Allah, relieve me of its difficulty. Make its difficulty easy for me to endure. فذلل لي صعوبتها وحزونتها واكفني شرها فإنك أنت الكافي المعافي والغالب القاهر القادر. You are the supreme. You are the one and the only. You're the one who controls every little thing in this world. Everything else is just recreation, pageantry, distraction, worthless, petty toys. Now he's sitting right there today. He came, and when I asked him to come along with me, he probably didn't know that I was going to talk about him, but I said, you know what? I want him to be a testimony. Where's he sitting? Right there, in the second row. And sure, he went through a lot, and just to satisfy your curiosity, they ended up putting a defibrillator in him, so there's a device that shocks him if the heart rate goes to a level that's too high, or paces it when it goes too low. He went through quite a lot, and he doesn't remember, he has no recollection of the event whatsoever. And I really, truly believe, and we all believe this, but every once in a while, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you these sobering signs of His presence. He gives you a reason to know without a shadow of doubt that He's in charge. That He's in charge. And I believe that to me, to him, to our entire family, this was one of those moments where he was, my father keeps saying that God gave us Muhammad Kadhim twice. The first time when he was born, and the second time when He literally brought him back from death. And it happened because of two things: dua and the holy dust of Imam al-Husayn's tomb. Turbat al-Husayn. Allahumma salli. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.